There's a certain kind of person who can reach the part of an avoidant no one else can touch. The one who doesn't beg, doesn't plead, and doesn't collapse under silence. The one who doesn't chase. Avoidantly attached individuals live in a quiet storm of contradictions. They crave intimacy, but fear it. They long to be seen, but dread exposure. They want closeness, but only if they can control it. To the world, they seem composed, independent, unreachable. But beneath that polished surface is an old, unspoken ache. Please, don't make me need you. In most relationships, the avoidant stays in control. When someone reaches out, they retreat. When someone shows emotion, they grow cold. It's not cruelty, it's defense. Their distance keeps them safe from the unbearable vulnerability of being known. Most people, sensing this coldness, react predictably. They chase harder. They explain more. They fill the silence with words, hoping to break through the wall. And in doing so, they reaffirm what the avoidant already believes, that closeness is chaos and love demands the loss of self. But then, someone different appears. Someone who refuses to play that emotional tug-of-war. Someone who doesn't interpret withdrawal as rejection, but as information. They don't fight the silence. They stand still inside it. They don't try to decode every mixed signal or prove their worth through emotional labor. They simply remain, self-contained, grounded, and whole. And for the avoidant, this is new terrain. Their usual control no longer works. Their silence isn't met with panic. Their distance isn't met with pursuit. Instead, it's met with calm indifference. And that calmness, that quiet refusal to chase, becomes the most disorienting experience of all. They start to think about this person more than they should. Not because they're being seduced, but because they can't categorize them. They can't predict their reactions. They can't control them. And in the avoidance world, that's where fascination begins. Because the one who doesn't chase becomes the one they can't forget. If you want to better understand how to deal with avoidance, then subscribe to the channel to know everything. Avoidants are used to being the ones who decide. They control when to connect, when to retreat, when to open up just enough to keep someone close, but never close enough to be known. This pattern gives them power, or at least the illusion of it. Because in their world, safety equals control, and control equals distance. But then, the balance breaks. When the avoidant meets someone they can emotionally manipulate through silence or withdrawal, something shifts. For the first time, their emotional rhythm is interrupted. The usual script, push, retreat, observe, return, doesn't play out the way they expect. They send mixed signals, and the other person doesn't chase. They grow cold, and the other person stays warm, but firm. They withdraw, and instead of pursuit, they're met with stillness. That stillness speaks louder than any confrontation could. It says, I see what you're doing, but I won't lose myself to it. To the avoidant, that's not indifference, that's power. Because what they truly fear isn't being alone. It's being powerless in connection. They've spent their lives building walls high enough to prevent anyone from seeing what's beneath. But this person doesn't climb those walls, nor do they beg for entry. They simply walk away when disrespected. They stay silent when silence is deserved. And that composure, that self-possession, pierces the avoidant's emotional armor in a way pleading never could. It starts as curiosity. Why aren't they reacting? Why don't they seem bothered? But curiosity soon becomes fixation. Because deep down, the avoidant realizes something they've never wanted to admit. They crave that kind of strength. That ability to care without clinging, to connect without surrender. It's everything they secretly wish they could be. This reversal of power leaves them restless. Their mind replays every exchange, every quiet moment where control slipped through their fingers. They start wondering, do they even miss me? Did I matter at all? That uncertainty becomes fuel for rumination. It's not love yet, it's disruption. But in the avoidant's inner world, disruption is the seed of obsession. Because for the first time, they're not the one holding the power. And that loss of control feels hauntingly intimate. There comes a moment when the avoidant looks at this person, the one who didn't chase, and something unfamiliar stirs inside them. It's not attraction in the usual sense. It's reflection. Because this person, calm and steady in their self-worth, mirrors back everything the avoidant has spent a lifetime avoiding. Their independence reflects the avoidant's own need for autonomy, but without fear. Their calm boundaries reveal the emotional regulation the avoidant wishes they had. Their ability to walk away without resentment exposes the fragility of the avoidant's control. It's a mirror, yes, but not a flattering one. It shows them their emotional contradictions in sharp relief. Avoidants often move through relationships like shadows, close enough to feel the warmth of connection, but never stepping into full light. Yet this person shines a steady light on them, not blinding, not harsh, just steady. And that light begins to reveal the truth beneath their avoidance, the longing to be seen without being suffocated. At first, they resist it. They tell themselves they're just confident or they're cold, anything to dismiss the discomfort rising in their chest. But denial doesn't last, because the emotional equilibrium of this person is magnetic. It's the calm they never had growing up, the emotional consistency that feels both foreign and familiar. Every time the avoidant tries to provoke distance, the other doesn't flinch. When they withdraw, there's no chase. When they test, there's no performance. Instead, there's something terrifyingly simple: acceptance without attachment. That's the paradox that shatters the avoidant's internal order. Because they were raised to believe love equals control, attention equals loss, and closeness equals chaos. But this person rewrites the rules by existing in balance, by showing that connection doesn't have to cost freedom. And slowly, the avoidant begins to crumble, not outwardly, but internally. Their silence no longer feels powerful, it feels lonely. Their retreat no longer feels safe, it feels hollow. They begin to miss the steadiness they once misread as indifference. That's the beginning of emotional awareness, the crack in the armor through which truth begins to pour. And with every passing day, that truth grows louder. Maybe the one who didn't chase was never distant. Maybe they were just whole. At first, the avoidant believes their silence protects them. It's their shield, their comfort zone, the quiet space where they can breathe without expectation. But over time, that silence begins to echo. What once felt like control now feels like absence, an emptiness that hums with all the words they never said. Because the truth is, silence is only powerful when someone else is still listening. And the one who didn't chase has stopped waiting for it to break. The avoidant doesn't notice it right away. They assume distance will restore balance, that the other person will eventually return, eager for scraps of connection. But that doesn't happen. The days stretch longer, and their absence grows heavier. The avoidant starts to feel something they don't understand at first, the discomfort of missing someone they pushed away. This is where obsession quietly begins. It doesn't announce itself. It creeps in through memory, small details that suddenly matter. The sound of a laugh, the calm tone of a conversation, the way that person's presence didn't demand, didn't chase, didn't consume. What the avoidant once saw as emotional detachment now feels like peace, and that peace becomes addictive. They scroll through old messages, read between lines that never existed, try to decode moments that once felt insignificant. The silence that used to protect them now feels like punishment. They start wondering, are they thinking of me? Did I matter? The irony is cruel. The avoidant, who once sought safety in solitude, now feels most unsafe when left alone with their thoughts. The absence of the one who didn't chase has become a mirror too loud to ignore. And in that stillness, a question forms, one they've never had to face before. What if I wasn't protecting myself? What if I was just hiding from love? That's the quiet tragedy of avoidance. It turns survival into isolation. And the moment they realize it, they begin to crave not attention, but presence. Not validation, but understanding. Not someone to chase them, but someone who could still see them when they ran. Yet, this time, the person who could has already stopped waiting. For most of their life, the avoidant has known fear only as a whisper, the kind that hides behind control, disguised as independence. They don't call it fear, they call it freedom. But when they lose the one person who didn't chase, the whisper becomes a roar. It's not just loneliness that unsettles them. It's exposure. Because for the first time, the avoidant can feel the depth of their own emotional dependency, the very thing they've denied their entire life. They start to recognize how their detachment wasn't peace, it was paralysis. Every retreat, every wall, every unfinished sentence was not self-protection, but self-sabotage. They remember moments, the quiet ones, the stable ones, when this person offered closeness without asking for control, when connection felt gentle, not invasive. And they realize how foreign that was to them, how they mistook calmness for disinterest, boundaries for rejection. Because in their emotional world, love has always been loud, dramatic, unpredictable, and fleeting. But this was different. This was real, and real is terrifying. So they ran, not because they didn't care, but because caring felt like exposure. They told themselves they were fine, that detachment was strength. But now, that distance feels like a wound that doesn't close. The calmness they once dismissed has become a haunting memory, a reminder that someone once saw them without demanding they change, without begging for their affection, without needing to be saved. That kind of love is difficult for an avoidant to forget because it doesn't come wrapped in chaos. It comes wrapped in safety, and safety is the one thing their nervous system doesn't know how to trust. So now, they oscillate between two truths. They want to reach out, but they don't know how. They want to be seen again, but the thought of being seen still terrifies them. Every time they think about contacting that person, their chest tightens, their mind replays every mistake, every silence that went too far. The avoidance that once kept them safe now feels like a cage. And the more they try to convince themselves they're fine, the louder their mind whispers the truth. You pushed away the only person who saw you and didn't flinch. And for the first time, it's not just loss they feel. It's regret. Regret is a strange thing for the avoidant. They're not used to feeling it so vividly, at least not in ways they can name. Usually, when a relationship fades, they convince themselves it wasn't right, that the other person was too much, too demanding, too emotional. It's easier to rationalize than to feel. But this time, their usual logic doesn't hold. Because this person didn't demand anything. They didn't beg or explode. They didn't need constant reassurance or push for closeness. They simply were. Calm, present, consistent. And it's that consistency the avoidant can't stop replaying. The quiet steadiness that made them feel something they never could put into words, safe. Now, in their absence, the avoidant feels the weight of what they've lost. Not the surface-level loss of a companion, but the deeper loss of possibility. The version of themselves they could have become if they hadn't been so afraid. They begin to notice the emptiness beneath their independence, how loneliness creeps into the spaces they once called peace. They scroll through their phone late at night, half hoping for a message that will never come. They hover over the contact name, crafting and deleting words that never feel right. Because how do you reach out when you've built your identity around never needing anyone? How do you admit that distance doesn't feel like freedom anymore? It feels like punishment. So they do what they've always done. They retreat into thought. But this time, thought doesn't protect them. It torments them. Every memory becomes sharper, clearer. The way that person looked at them, steady, without judgment. The way their silence used to feel comfortable, not cold. The way the connection was never about control, but mutual respect. And somewhere between memory and longing, a truth begins to surface. They didn't lose someone who needed them. They lost someone who chose them. That realization cuts deep. Because for the avoidant, choice without dependence feels like the purest form of love and the hardest to keep. So now, they're caught between impulse and fear, wanting to reach out, but afraid of rejection, wanting to fix what's broken, but terrified of being seen as weak. And yet, beneath all that fear, a single thought keeps pulsing like a heartbeat. They were the only one who stayed calm when I ran. And that kind of peace is unforgettable. There's a quiet war happening inside the avoidant now. A war between the part of them that longs to reconnect and the part that still believes needing someone means losing control. Every instinct urges them to retreat, to protect the fragile illusion of independence they've lived by for years. But their heart, that restless part they've ignored for so long, is starting to wake up. They think about reaching out, but even the idea feels dangerous. Vulnerability, for them, isn't just uncomfortable, it's disorienting. Their nervous system equates closeness with chaos, and yet, the silence feels even louder now. Each day, without contact stretches like a reminder of their own contradictions. They tell themselves it's better this way, that they don't need closure, that feelings fade. But this time they don't. Because this wasn't just any connection. This person didn't pull or push. They didn't make the avoidant feel trapped. They made them feel seen. And being seen, truly seen, by someone who expected nothing in return, that was new. That was dangerous in the most beautiful way. Now, the avoidant finds themselves checking the other's social media quietly, trying to decode the smallest signs of life. A photo, a quote, a smile that doesn't include them. Each one cuts deeper than they'll ever admit. They wonder if this person misses them, if they still think about what once existed in the spaces between words. But they can't ask, not directly. To ask would mean surrendering the last fragment of control they have left. So instead, they linger in silence, hoping the other might make the first move. But deep down, they know this person won't. That's what made them different. They never chased. They never begged. They respected their own peace more than they needed the avoidant's attention. And that truth burns. Because now the avoidant realizes what they mistook for detachment was actually self-respect. What they read as indifference was strength. What they thought was distance was dignity. They've lost not just a person, but a mirror of what love could have looked like if they had been brave enough to stay open. And every moment of quiet now reminds them that avoidance doesn't protect them anymore. It isolates them from the one thing they can't stop craving: genuine connection. Something subtle begins to shift inside the avoidant. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly, in the spaces between distractions, in the quiet hours when the world stops demanding and their thoughts grow too heavy to silence. The armor that once protected them now feels too tight, like they can't breathe behind it anymore. They start remembering details they once dismissed: the calm tone of the other's voice, the safety of conversations that never spiraled into drama, the way being near them didn't require performance. It's these small, ordinary moments that sting the most, because they reveal what the avoidant truly lost. Not a person, but the rare feeling of emotional peace. Avoidants aren't used to introspection that hurts. Usually, when discomfort arises, they escape into work, distractions, control. But now, avoidance doesn't work the same way. The things that used to numb them feel hollow. The detachment that once made them feel powerful now feels like grief. So they start to question themselves, quietly, tentatively. Why did I run when it finally felt safe? Why did I push away someone who never tried to trap me? The answers come slowly, and they hurt. Because it's not about the other person anymore. It's about what their presence revealed. This person didn't just trigger attraction. They triggered recognition. A deep, almost primal realization that the avoidance distance was never strength. It was fear wearing the mask of self-sufficiency. And once that truth sinks in, it's impossible to unsee. They begin to notice how every silence, every withdrawal, every moment of emotional retreat was a way of reenacting old wounds. Wounds that told them love was dangerous, that closeness meant loss. But the one who didn't chase, they didn't confirm that story. They challenged it. By staying grounded. By staying calm. By leaving when boundaries were crossed. That quiet strength cracked the illusion of control. And now, in its place, there's something unfamiliar. Longing, humility, maybe even hope. The avoidant starts to realize that what they miss isn't control, but connection. Not attention, but understanding. And though they may not be ready to admit it aloud, a small part of them, the part that's tired of running, whispers something almost revolutionary. Maybe I don't want to be alone anymore. There comes a night when the avoidant can no longer distract themselves. No amount of work, noise, or scrolling can drown out the quiet ache that's settled inside them. It's not dramatic. It's heavy, still, and deeply human. It's the realization that for all their efforts to stay untouchable, they've ended up untouched. This is the moment they finally see the cost of their emotional armor. Every wall they built to stay safe also kept love out. Every retreat protected them from pain, but it also protected them from warmth. They thought they were escaping rejection, but what they were really escaping was intimacy. And now, as they sit with the echo of that absence, they realize something even harder. The one who didn't chase did care. They cared deeply, but they cared without surrendering themselves. And that, the avoidant now understands, was love in its healthiest form. Not control, not dependence, just quiet, steady presence. The avoidant replays the past, seeing it differently this time. Every moment of silence that used to feel victorious now feels like loss. Every time they withheld affection now looks like self-sabotage. And that person's stillness, their calm refusal to chase, no longer feels like rejection. It feels like wisdom. A boundary made of self-respect, not indifference. And here's the twist that breaks the avoidant open. They realize they were never rejected at all. They were simply met with someone who refused to lose themselves to earn love. Someone who modeled what the avoidant had been running from. The kind of connection that doesn't control or consume. The kind that heals. For the first time, they don't want to win. They don't want to retreat. They just want to feel what they never allowed themselves to feel. Safe, close, connected, human. But now, it's not about chasing the other person. It's about facing themselves. The version of them that's terrified of love but starved for it. The one who built walls, thinking they were doors. The one who thought independence meant never needing anyone. And as that realization sinks in, they understand something both painful and freeing. The one who didn't chase wasn't trying to be unforgettable. They just were, because they represented everything the avoidant secretly wanted to become. In the end, it's not a grand revelation that changes the avoidant. It's the quiet acceptance that the person who didn't chase was never trying to win them. They were simply being themselves. Whole, rooted, free. And that kind of presence doesn't beg to be remembered. It just is. The avoidant finally sees it. This person's strength wasn't in their distance, but in their balance. They could love without losing themselves. They could care without collapsing. They could walk away with peace instead of resentment. For someone whose life has been built on emotional control, that balance feels almost mythical, a kind of love that doesn't need to dominate to exist. And in that realization, something inside the avoidant softens. Maybe for the first time in their life, they don't see vulnerability as a trap, but as a bridge. They start to understand that connection doesn't have to mean surrender, and that independence doesn't have to mean isolation. The one who didn't chase has become their unspoken teacher, showing them, through example, what real intimacy looks like. They don't run from the memory anymore. They sit with it. They let it breathe. And somewhere between regret and gratitude, they begin to heal. Because they finally understand what made this person unforgettable. It wasn't mystery or detachment. It was authenticity. The quiet, unwavering kind that never needed to prove anything. For the avoidant, this becomes the beginning of something new. Not another relationship, but a reckoning with themselves. A slow, humbling desire to show up differently next time. To stay when things get uncomfortable. To speak when silence feels safer. To reach, even when it terrifies them. Because the truth is, the one who didn't chase was never their punishment. They were their mirror. And through that mirror, the avoidant saw not who they were, but who they could still become: open, grounded, and capable of love that doesn't hide behind control. And even if they never meet again, their presence lingers, not as obsession anymore, but as awakening. The kind that doesn't fade, because it was never about the other person. It was about the part of the avoidant that's finally ready to come home to itself. So if you've ever been the one who didn't chase, know this: you were seen. You made an impact. You became unforgettable not by fighting for love, but by embodying it. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more reflections like this. Because the path to understanding avoidance starts with understanding yourself.